Hi, everyone. Welcome to Lightworkers Secret to Success. My name is Adam, and I am hosting tonight our very dear, one of our own, Rebecca Tripp. And Rebecca is, she's an author of a book of Secrets of a Metaphysical Flight Attendant. And she is one of our key speakers here that meets every Monday and Friday to interview or talk with or have different conversations about different topics. And so tonight we decided that we were going to interview her because she's got a really good book. If you haven't purchased it yet, I'd highly recommend it. And she's also a Silva Ultramind elite teacher, and she can teach you everything that, for those of you know who Vishen is the name Vishen?
Vishen Lakiani.
Yeah, he's the owner of Mind Valley, and she actually, in my opinion, does a better job than Vishen does. So,
don't say that. He wouldn't like that.
well, that's okay. I'm just speaking the truth from my truth, anyways. Whether or not it is true for someone else, but that's my experience. So, Rebecca, why don't you tell everyone a little bit about yourself, your background, where you've come from, and how you got to write that book?
Okay, I'll give you the short version. I grew up in a town called Westport, Massachusetts, and I started thinking about being a stewardess when I was 12 years old. When my father came home from a business trip, and he had an application to be an Eastern airline stewardess, they're no longer in business, on him, and he showed it to me and he said, you might want to think about doing this maybe someday. And I think I was only about 12, but I saved that application and it was always in the back of my mind. So after I'd gone to college for a couple of years and found out I really didn't want to be a school teacher, this was back in the 60s where women had about 4 career choices, believe it or not. We've come a long way since then. You could be a teacher, a nurse, a secretary, or a stewardess. You could even be a hairdresser. But that was really about it. There weren't a lot of career paths for women. And so I went to school for a couple of years thinking I didn't really want to be a teacher. That was a teacher's college. And so bingo, I left and I got a job working as an airline stewardess in 1967, flew away, immediately met teachers that started teaching me things like creative visualization. I got on the path as a seeker, and I'd always been a seeker. I was one of those people that was always looking for the big answers to things like, why are we here? What is God? What are we as humans doing on planet Earth? Why are there males and females and all these creatures living here? And I was always asking those questions and I never really got any good answers. But I started to meet these people that were opening my thought to the realization that there's a lot that we don't learn in school or in church about the way the universe works. Because I was taught initially creative visualization. Visualize what you want, feel like you've already gotten it, and it will show up in your life. And I was really good at it. I could visualize, I visualized a move to New York, a beautiful apartment, bingo, effortlessly. Talked my roommate into transferring with me, transfers went through, walked into a beautiful apartment, lived in New York. Then I was able to manifest all sorts of experiences. I've moved many times in my life, but the first book I read was Think and Grow Rich. The man that taught me how to visualize said, read Think and Grow Rich. So I read that book, but I've read hundreds, if not thousands, of metaphysical spiritual books ever since, because I got hooked on this whole idea that you can use your mind to manifest, and moved along the path, went out to California and had what I consider a real spiritual awakening out there when I was diagnosed with early cancer of the cervix. And the doctor gave me 2 choices, surgery or death. And I think I was about 26 years old. Neither one of those options were at all acceptable to me. In fact, I've actually felt my blood run cold through my veins. I was numb with fear when he told me this, because I'd never had a big problem in my life before this. Well, I had met a man who had had a spiritual healing of a brain tumor. And I said to myself, there's got to be something to this. If I can visualize things and make them happen, why couldn't I change the cells in my body? I know other people have done it. I've heard about spiritual healing, but not a lot. Well, I went to a healer and she healed me instantaneously by just allaying my fear and telling me that perfect health was my birthright. And as soon as she said that, I just went back to my birth practically and awakened to the realization, of course, we create conditions in our body with negative thinking, and we can uncreate them when we let go of those beliefs. And that's what I did. And instantaneously, everything shifted. Now, why did I write this book? Because I taught, like you said, as a Silva Ultramind trainer for about 5 years. Vishen was actually my marketing person, and he was also a trainer. Very good marketing person. And I trained people all over the country, and they would fly in from different parts of the world even to take the training because it's very hard to get. And it's life-changing because once you learn how to relax yourself and get down to that alpha, theta level of consciousness, you can change your belief system because your beliefs are all programmed in your subconscious mind. And people wake up when they realize that, and they can actually start visualizing, imagining, believing what they desire rather than being stuck in that same old routine of this isn't really what I want, but I'm stuck here, right? So my students kept asking me to write a book because they couldn't figure out why a stewardess, a flight attendant by that time, we changed our names, was so interested in these things. You know, because they touched on these topics, but they weren't really digging into them as deeply as I was. That's why they came to the workshops. It's a 2-day seminar I used to give them. And so after I stopped traveling around the country doing the seminars, I had some time. And I spent 3 years working with a ghostwriter and wrote the book, which came out in 2014. And I've combined stories as a crew member with different experiences and people I met along the way that took me on the path. And, you know, not only is it about how to heal yourself and heal others and manifest, but it's also how to find inner peace. Because once you realize that you can always go within, no matter what kind of a situation you're in, and as a crew member, there were many dicey situations that could happen, you know, severe turbulence, engines blowing up, maybe the landing gear wasn't going to come down, near misses, fires, you name it. All this kind of stuff can happen in aviation, and I flew for 35 years. So I had a pretty good dose of a little bit of everything. But, you know, I was never really freaked out at all, ever on an airplane. I was always in a state of calm, no matter what. And you can do that if you know how to go within to change your perception. My expression, it's kind of my tagline that came to me one day when I was driving my car. If you want to see perfection, change your perception. And now all the gurus are talking about this now. I hear David Icke say it. I hear, Joe Dispenza. It's all about your perception. Two people can be having the very, very same experience, but they perceive it in different ways. Like, I'll give you an example. One night I was on a layover in London, and I went out to dinner with a couple of the other flight attendants. And we actually took a bus, I remember. Well, we got off the bus, and one of the flight attendants realized she had left something on the bus. And so we got in a taxi and chased the bus and got it, which turned out okay. Now, the next trip I got on, here were these flight attendants again, and we had shared this layover on the previous trip. And one of them said, "Oh, that was the most horrible experience. Can you believe she almost lost that on the bus, and we had to get a taxi, and it was like, oh, it was just terrible." And I was listening to her going, that is really interesting, because my perception of it was we had a great outcome. It was kind of fun. It was an adventure, you know, in London, and it all worked out. So that was just one incident that made me realize it's all in your perception. But in this book, I also bring in different experiences I had. Like there's one chapter called The French Twist, where I got on a flight early in the morning. No, it wasn't early in the morning. It was midday. We used to fly a 14-hour flight to Narita, Japan, and lay over there. 14 hours is a long flight. So beautiful 747 aircraft, working first class. Passengers get on, they sit down. One man traveling alone, I'm offering them mimosas, coffee, whatever they'd like. So I get to him, and my hair was in a French twist. And he said, "Your French twist is crooked." And I went, "Really?" And he kind of freaked me out. You know, he was like making me feel uncomfortable, like I didn't look very good. And so I walked away. And then I went back to give him some more service. And he said, "I'm going to have you in tears before this airplane leaves the gate." And I went, whoa. Now, in this day and age, this was in the late 90s, we would just call customer service and say, "Get this dude off the airplane." But we were still doing our flight attendant thing back then and being polite, calming them down. The job of a stewardess in the 60s and even on for a bit from then was to act like an upper class housewife, believe it or not.
Crazy.
So I did that. But you know, I walked away and my intuition said, there's something else bothering this man. So I went up to him and I said, "So did you have a big fight with your wife before you left this morning?" I mean, we were going on a 14-hour flight and I wasn't going to listen to this for 14 hours. Right away, he sort of snapped out of it and said, "Actually, she and I haven't been getting along for years."
Oh, wow.
And after that, he was fine. So intuition, I'm just giving that as an example. When you're centered, when you're at peace with yourself, you don't let things like that throw you. You know, I'm not saying there aren't other people in my life that can sometimes trigger me, that I know a little bit better than him. But I give a lot of examples in this book about real life experiences. There's another one I call my Mother Teresa experience, where I was in the aisle and everybody was grabbing my apron and tapping me on the butt, trying to get service. It was like a hellhole. It was like a snake pit. That was all I could think of. I was in a snake pit and I wasn't up for it. And I just immediately thought, I'm going to scream if they don't stop. And all of a sudden I was lifted out of my body. Literally, I went up. I mean, I was still standing there in the aisle. They didn't know I was lifted out of my body, but I went above it all. And I heard this voice to tell me, "Love looseth me and lifteth me above hate's thrall." Words from a hymn. And I backed down into my body. And I call it my Mother Teresa experience. I imagined I was like this caring, loving person feeding the starving masses in Calcutta. I wasn't really on a United Airlines jet serving these monsters.
Wow.
And they never bothered me again. I was able to stay above the passengers for the rest of my career.
Wow.
They never bothered me. And that's what I realized. You know, it's all about, what are you attached to? You can either let things really throw you for a loop, or you can stay detached and kind of observe it like an amusing movie. And that there's a lot of things like that in this book, believe me. Some of the other chapter headings are called The Bunny Club, Baggage. I realized traveling as a crew member, you got to travel light. A lot of baggage. You're going to be miserable trying to drag that bag all over the world. It's not going to work. But you better know what you're taking with you that you're going to need. And so you're not frustrated when you get to Timbuktu and you don't have that book you wanted or whatever. So, and then I've got, you might need a private jet, and skydiving is the last chapter. But it is a spiritual memoir with a lot of, and there's 3 husbands in here, all very interesting characters. You know, the first one was this unbelievably good looking international model that I met on a flight. And we just happened to have everything in common. We're both Tauruses. He lived in New York. I was living in Marin County. I wanted to live in New York and study acting. He was a TV commercial actor and a model. And we connected, and I ended up marrying him a year later. And we owned a modeling agency in New York. And he was the doorman at Studio 54. This was in 1978, 79, which was a very happening thing back then. Everybody went to Studio 54. Everybody. And that was back, you know, I started working in the 60s when we were free to live wherever we wanted, to travel without any kind of pat downs or security checks. You could just travel freely. The world was our oyster, and people will never experience that, I'm afraid to say. You know, it's gone, but it was a freedom that was just fabulous. And it's interesting because a lot of the younger people I know are very nostalgic now about the 60s. I just had a conversation the other night, and they said, oh yeah, my niece or nephew or someone, all he talks about is the 60s, and he's like in his 20s, because they know that might have been the last good time. You know, you got to really work we didn't even have to work at it. We were all having a blast.
Well, I think, yeah, like even like Woodstock, going to Woodstock, I look at that and I would have just had like the time of my life going to that, right? Like it just, it would have been fun.
And there was no security. And I mean, they never expected a crowd like that. And it was a big love fest. There were no problems, you know. I mean, it was incredible. It was incredible. And the culture back then was so into the music in the 60s. I hate to say it, but the music today doesn't even compare. I mean, we're talking Joplin, Jimi Hendrix. You know, the music was unbelievable because they really were singing a message. I mean, freedom, Richie Havens. I used to wake up every morning when I lived in Greenwich Village listening to Richie Havens singing Morning. You know, he was at Woodstock. That kind of made him when he went there. But yeah, I mean, there was a freedom. And it's funny because the older generation was very freaked out by the younger generation, the hippie culture. Scared. But it was minor compared to what goes on today. They were not bashing each other in the streets, or you know, the crime was nothing like it is today. Nothing like it. It was a whole different vibe. You know, it was amazing.
Yeah, you're right. Amanda Collette, I don't know if Pamela's still with us. I know she was having connected. She couldn't connect to the internet that well. Any questions for Rebecca?
Hey, Rebecca. I just had a question. What was your biggest inspiration for writing your book?
My biggest inspiration? Well, I wrote it because I really wanted to share the story with my students. You know, I trained thousands of people, and I don't know if you'd call that it was an inspiration. I mean, and I just felt like it was the next thing to do. And I didn't know how to do it because I'm not a writer, but I was guided. It was almost like my higher self guided me to Dave, the coach, who after a few sessions, the light bulb went on when he said one simple statement. It's usually one statement that wakes us up. And the statement he said to me was, you can write that book wherever you are. Because I thought I had, like Eckhart Tolle said, he wrote his book, I think in California. He had to be in a certain place to write it, the vibe. And that's what I started thinking. Oh, I can't write my book in my hometown because I was living in Westport. I got to go to California or Paris or someplace exotic. And when Dave said, you can write your book wherever you are, it all clicked. And bingo, I found Bryna, my ghostwriter. We spent 3 years going to our favorite French restaurant. We would have lunch there. She would type and I would talk. And it was fun. it was really a fun experience. It wasn't like work. It was a process that was very, they would call it, cleansing, cathartic. You dig into your different periods of your life where you had experiences. And I would highly recommend anybody writing their own memoir, because it's an interesting process. In fact, I connected with a United pilot on LinkedIn a few days ago who wrote a book. And similar thing, he wrote a spiritual memoir about his journey as a pilot and some of the things he's learned from experiencing cultures, different cultures around the world. Because travel is really an amazing education. When you get to travel to Asia, South America, Europe, and spend time with people from all over the world, you begin to realize we're all the same, and we all want the same things. We just don't want to be happy, and everybody has families and children and go to work, and we all do it in our various ways with different cultures, but we're all basically doing the same things. It's the governments that are trying to make people crazy. Yeah.
Colette, how about you? Any questions for Rebecca?
Yeah, sorry, I'm off camera right now. So I have a few questions. One is, can you talk a little bit more about the Silva method, or like the techniques that you actually like know how to do? Because I know you've healed so many people of like amazing results with them. So I'm just, if you want to just talk about that a little bit, I'm curious.
Yeah. Well, for 2 years, I tried to find something to do after I retired from my flying career, because I retired in my 50s and I wasn't ready to hang it up. So I kept, looking for my next adventure, and nothing was turning up until I surrendered. And I found the book in a bookstore called Silva Mind Control. And they just happened to be looking for trainers at that very moment. I don't know, there was a card in the book or some darn thing that alerted me to that. And I connected with Alex Silva, who was the nephew of Jose, because Jose had passed away. So I was trained to be a Silva Ultra Mind trainer. And, I've had a few paranormal experiences in my life, and quite a few. And one of them that I had when I was down in Coral Gables training to be a trainer, which was a week down there with Alex and some people that were also training. I was sleeping in this hotel way up on like maybe the 10th floor. And in the middle of the night, after the first day of training, I heard something fall in the bathroom. And I got up to go see what had fallen on the ceramic floor. Nothing. It was like nothing. And I'm going, that was really strange. And then the room filled up with the smell of Mexican food. And it was the next day when I was sitting in the classroom, I went, wait a minute, Jose Silva was Mexican American. He lived in Old Laredo. And I really felt like maybe he visited or something or gave me a sign. But one of the most powerful techniques with the Silva training is what's called the mental video technique. And we teach people how to use that time when you're sleeping every night, because you basically sleep a third of your life away, to be productive. And if you once get yourself relaxed, using the long relax, relaxing your body, and all it is a meditation to relax your body from head to toe. And then you relax your mind by picturing some happy scene that you like, a walk in the woods or a day at the beach, something pleasant that clears your mind from all that negative chatter. And then you go to your special place, which is level 1. And that's where you go to do your work. It's your laboratory within you. It's God within you. And when you're in there, you can create with mental videos, using your imagination, videos of projects that you're working on or outcomes that you want. It could be outcomes in a relationship that you want to get better or even attract into your life. It can be a work situation that you want to focus on step by step in, getting it done. And health, wealth, and happiness are the 3 big categories for people. Or it can be relaxing yourself and really feeling like I clear my body every single night. Like I'll go through it. It's just natural for me to do this. And if I feel something weird, that's bothering me, I'll just release it, or heal it. I mean, we use techniques in the Silva training, like if you had gallstones, you could actually imagine taking the stones and crushing them between your fingers. There was a doctor named O. Carl Symington, who was an oncologist, a cancer doctor, who took the Silva training and used it very successfully with his patients. Years ago, there was something called Pac-Man that was a video game, and they would imagine that Pac-Man was eating up the bad cells.
Oh, wow.
And they would disappear. You can make tumors disappear. You can energize your body. It's amazing what you can do, because we are our beliefs. And once you learn how to change your beliefs by going into that alpha level, which is your subconscious mind, which is really running the show, whether we know it or not, it's the subconscious that runs everything, and it's the program, and we've all been programmed since we were children. So if we don't like the program, we can change it. That's why Jose called it Silva mind control, because you can learn how to control your own mind without being constantly influenced by negative news, negative beliefs from other people. We're actually sovereign. Now, Jose went so far as to believe what he came upon was what Jesus was telling everyone: be as a little child, because it's that childlike acceptance that it's going to work. Children don't question whether or not Santa Claus is real or certain things up to certain ages, usually around 7. They're living at the theta level of consciousness up to 7, and then they move more into the alpha level. And 12 and 13 are the magical years where you can really have an effect on a child with programming positive things, and they're very receptive. And 21 is, we go through 7-year cycles. 21 is typically when you decide, are you going to be a strictly left brain linear thinker, only believing your 5 senses are it, or are you going to be right brain, intuitive, spiritual, tapped in? Most of the population of the planet is just a left brain thinker. But of course, we're going through an awakening. And Jose's teachings were just part of that progression. And because he had a revelation in 1998 that this is it. We're moving into the next phase of human evolution. And we all have superpowers. Once you really, if you can go within and say to yourself, the spiritual dimension is the real. The material world is almost like the shadow of it. It's the results of what's happening in our consciousness. So when you go in and really believe that you can create in the spiritual dimension what you desire, bingo, you can be a manifester and a co-creator. Yeah.
Clyde, I think you had a couple of questions, but that's very powerful, thinking about Pac-Man eating up the cells. And
Yeah.
Elizabeth April, who's someone we all follow on
Right.
YouTube, she was just actually talking about that. It's your belief system, and they were talking about the V's that people are getting, and
Yeah.
and if you believe that the V's are good for you, then they will be. And if you believe that they are poisonous, you probably aren't going to make it. And or if you're not even sure and you just do it, the chances of you making it, I think, drastically diminish. So, your belief system is everything.
Right. And yeah, well, some people will not give spiritual healing treatments to others if they are on medication,
Mm-hmm.
because the belief is what you're doing is it's a house divided. You're saying, I believe in spiritual healing, but I don't really trust it, so I'm going to take the medication too.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I'm not that rigid. I mean, if I truly need medical attention, as you know, I've had an accident this year, I don't have a problem. But I do find I hardly ever, I can't even think about how many times I've been to a doctor in my life. I just never go, because I do believe that, and you go through these phases, you know, like I just turned 75 and I used to think that was old age. I don't even think that anymore. I mean, I can remember when I thought 50 was old age, but then you go through that and you go, that's not old age. I don't think there is any old age.
I don't think so either.
No, there's just a state of mind. Everything is a state of mind. And, you know, once you understand that you are creating, I mean, I have met people truly that are very, very awake spiritually that were in their 90s, and you would never believe it. I mean, I have met some people like that in my life. They just they don't believe it. So you wouldn't believe it when you see them.
Yeah, I met a couple when I was in Vermont skiing, and they were 95 skiing double black diamonds, and I won't even ski a double black diamond.
I love it. 95.
95, I couldn't believe, and they did not look 95. Like, honestly, I had no idea. And they were skiing double black diamonds right after an ice storm. And I'm like, you guys are nuts. Like, I wouldn't even ski that. I wouldn't even attempt to ski a double black diamond.
Wow. That's incredible.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we are capable of amazing things. And the only thing that holds us back is ourselves. But that's what was so powerful about the Silva training. It gives you techniques that you can use every single day to turn things around. You know, like every time I have to get in my car and go somewhere, I just automatically get into that zone, that alpha level, where I just expect no accidents, everything's going to be harmonious, no problems, the car's not going to fall apart. And I've always, like when I had that head-on collision, I actually had a head-on collision with no seatbelt on, broke the windshield, broke the steering wheel with my chest, and didn't crack a bone.
Wow.
And I still, to this day, I think about, there was this young doctor, I did have to go to the hospital because my blood pressure went way down, and the car was demolished. So I went to the hospital, and they made me stand up, and they x-rayed me from head to toe. And then this young doctor came in, and I was lying on the gurney, and he looked in my face and he said, "You didn't even crack a bone." And he knew the accident was bad because the policeman who showed up on the scene came into the hospital to give me a ticket, because I had hydroplaned and crossed the line on the road and slammed into a pickup truck.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, and I didn't realize until afterwards, he probably was just simply stunned to think. I mean, I broke the steering wheel with my head. I had a little tiny thing right here. The blood dripped right down to above my eyebrow. It didn't even go to my eyebrow. And I went back to the junkyard and I looked at the car. And when I showed up, the guy said, "You're alive?" Literally, the roof of the car was buckled.
Wow.
It was like an accordion. The engine had dropped down. Thank God, it would have crushed me. It dropped down. The steering wheel was all collapsed from the force of my chest hitting it. And I walked away. Go figure.
That's crazy.
Yeah. So you can do amazing things. Yeah, you can do all kinds of things. You just have to believe it. And you got to trust. And you've got to clear all that negative crap out of your subconscious. That's a process. That's a process. And, you know, we incarnate into this life and we all have different things we're working on. I will tell you, I do believe in my immediate past life, I was a pilot that got shot down. And I came into this life really planning to work on spiritual healing and trusting that my mind could heal my body, because I didn't like the fact that I died after I was shot down. And I had this past life experience where I could sense that I was in this steamy little room, burned all over, waiting for a doctor to come in and save my life, and he couldn't do anything. And I died. And it was a very vivid memory. And so I think I set myself up in this life to be a stewardess instead of a pilot, because I didn't want to be part of being at the controls again. And doing it that way. And then when I had the opportunity to put my money where my mouth was, it was like, okay, you're going to go the medical route and have a surgery and lose one of your favorite organs, or are you going to take the leap of faith? And even though it was scary as hell, once you take that leap and you land on the other side intact, it's like, oh my God, that wasn't even hard. We think it's hard.
Yep. Yep.
But if you take the leap, and a lot of people that are living in fear right now, they need to understand the fear is being created by them. And that's what I found out.
Mhm.
I had a fear of cancer, and I had a fear of my body, and I didn't have it under control. So I manifested my greatest fear.
Yep.
And that's what you do.
Yep. Exactly.
Yep. That's what happens.
Colette, I know you said you had a few questions. Did you get all your questions answered?
I had asked her something else about something, but it's okay. The other question is like, what advice do you have for people who are light workers and maybe they don't have the support? Like you just like got up and left, right? So you didn't really have like a bunch of negative people around you making you doubt your intuition, like a lot of what light workers do. So what, or maybe you did, I don't know.
Oh, that's an interesting question, because I am living like near my hometown again, even though I lived in New York City, California, Hawaii, throughout my flying career, I lived all over the country. And then after I landed, when I had this awakening and I realized that, spiritual healing is real, we have our belief system, we can wake up from the dream. I thought everybody, including my family and closest friends, would be dying to hear this information. But people are, and I know a lot of light workers are going through this, we become like mirrors to them. And most people are not doing a lot of work on themselves because they're not that curious. They're what we call the drifters, the 98%ers. Napoleon Hill knew all about that. He wrote about them in Outwitting the Devil and Think and Grow Rich. Most people don't bother. They're also called Mechanical Man by one of my favorite gurus, Gurdjieff, and it pisses them off. And I used to have to tell my students this when I give them the Silva training. I'd say, now you're going to go home and you're like the grown-up, because you don't buy a lot of the craziness that your friends and family are still stuck in. You can see through it now, and you've got techniques to turn it around. But it can really aggravate people because people like being stuck in their drama or their attachments to misery. Not everybody wants to be healed. It can be very useful to be an invalid. It sounds crazy, but you can get money, you can get taken care of. There's different reasons people do different things. And like, I'm into freedom. I want freedom. I want health. I want vitality. I don't want to be stuck. But other people my age, they like to sit around and talk about their medication and their sicknesses. And it is hard for light workers. But I'll tell you, I had a great conversation with another light worker today that I'd never met before. We just connected on the internet. And he said, what's happening is we're all forming networks where we can connect with each other and have these kinds of conversations. But we have to be careful, really, when we're talking to the people that aren't awake, because it either freaks them out, makes them nervous, makes them attack us. They're just not ready. And we have to accept that. Not everybody wants to wake up during the Great Awakening.
That's true. That's true.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we've been going for quite a while. Amanda, any other follow-up questions for you at all?
No, I just love listening to Rebecca's stories. She just has so many fascinating ones. So I thank you, Rebecca, so much for your time and your wisdom and your energy. And I really appreciate listening to everything you had to say.
Thank you. You guys are the best.
Yeah, me too. And I actually get the privilege of speaking with Rebecca every day from 8:45 to like 9:30. So I get to listen to all these wonderful stories all the time, and I love it, and I feel so honored and blessed to have that sort of privilege. And I value that very, very highly. I never take it for granted. So I appreciate you, Rebecca, sharing all of this wonderful knowledge. And I'm sure I haven't even heard half of it. I know when you and Shona started talking the other night, I was quite interested.
You got a different take on it too, that with her. Yeah. Yeah. But they can buy my book if they go to my website, RebeccaTripp.com. I'll send them a signed copy for $9.95. And it is a really good read.
Awesome.
My ghostwriter did an amazing job. So thank you, guys.
And if you have any questions for Rebecca, just leave us a comment and we'll be happy to respond, or just head right to her website, RebeccaTripp.com, and you can hit her up there and you can message her and talk to her. And so I just want to thank everyone for watching this. I hope you got some value. I hope you were entertained. And if you did and you liked it, make sure you subscribe to our channel, like this video, and share it with someone else if you felt there was some value there that someone else might get from it. So everyone have a good night. Thank you so much for watching. We appreciate you, and we'll see you all